So we wanted to kick things off and just give everyone a chance to introduce themselves and a little bit about their role. Today we have Kevin Carr, we have Representative Andrew Learned, and then we also have Doug Adams. So Representative Learned, would you start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just go around the table?
Thanks for having me. Andrew Learned, I represent Brandon and Riverview, really the eastern suburbs of Tampa in the Florida House. I'm relatively new to this, just got elected in 2020. I'm a military guy, did 5 years active duty doing the Somali piracy missions, leading teams in my younger days. Then went to the reserves, where I've been with Special Operations Command Central ever since. And that's when I started my business. So totally different line of work. Own a small tutoring company. We just help kids, reading, writing, math, be successful in life. But one of the things that drew me to the manufacturing caucus all along is whenever I think, in business, one of the things we want is to have customers out of state or out of the country, things that are going to bring money and resources to our communities by making things that are going to make the world a better place. I like to think that my kids are going to go off and do that. But damn, it was pretty cool to see what you guys are doing here locally, because you guys are on the front edge of doing that right here, right now. So thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Doug?
So Doug Adams, you're the president here at Adams. 63 years old this year, 63 in January. Our business, third generation, family owned.
You're saying you're 63 years old? Or
I look 63.
You don't look 63.
I look 63 with my gray beard, but no, I'm 38. But you're actually younger than me, which is interesting. And he's got my same haircut, so we got some mixture here. I didn't go there. So we exist, purely to help manufacturers in, Florida, and this recently, Alabama, as we just expanded, and the Caribbean, be more competitive in the global marketplace. And that could be they're making their machines more reliable, increasing productivity through automation, helping customers with a technology or learning a technology that they might necessarily have in their factory, so they can go and compete, with Asia and with Europe and with South American countries. To try to keep jobs here and then also attract talent, throughout the country. As you've seen, we have a pretty, I would say, competitive state in regards to bringing businesses here. We've had quite a few manufacturers move in, and none that I know of actually leave, which is a testament of the environment and whatnot. I think that anything that we can do to try to help customers do that really helps the area as a whole.
Kevin, over to you.
I'm Kevin Carr. I'm with FloridaMakes, NonProfit. And back to your age reference, when I walked in, I saw established in 1960, and I was like, yeah, you too. So I dated myself there. So FloridaMakes is a public-private partnership that really operates on top of the state's regional manufacturing associations. It's what we referred to as a manufacturing extension partnership, which is a national program run out of the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's been around since Reagan. He signed it into law. And so we're one of actually 50 states plus Puerto Rico. And the mission is improving the productivity and technological performance of U.S. manufacturing with an emphasis on small firms. So we basically take that national mission, bring it down here to Florida. And, we take and embrace as our mission strengthening and advancing Florida's manufacturing base, which, as you talk to a lot of people, they're not even aware of that. It's Mickey, it's the beaches, and manufacturing is not on the radar screen. But there is, in fact, a pretty sizable manufacturing industry in Florida. It's kind of hidden, but, it's in the, high 50 billions in terms of industry-wise. Not far behind those other industries we're better known for. And so our job is, along the lines of what you're talking about, and you're also talking about, is growing that sector for the Florida economy. It's good for, our industry and economic diversification. It's great for a standard of living. And so, we're pushing hard on that. We've been around here since 2015. There was a previous center, but we were a restart back in 2015. And as I said, we built it on top of the association. So we're everywhere from Pensacola to Key West, working with firms. And in this state, there's 23,000 manufacturing firms employing 410,000. I think it's 410,000 and growing. So you're seeing manufacturing in Florida on the rise. I'm not sure we're threatening, the Midwest yet. But that's beginning to happen, where you're seeing, as you said, a migration of industries down here and then thriving here. And we've got a lot of big industries, and more we're trying to get those industries connected to the firms that we have down here, so we have a bigger piece of that supply chain.
It's really interesting. I think also the dynamic here, we've got, public or state representation, and then we also representation on private business ownership, and then on the nonprofit side, and then you all three are here together, obviously, and all on this podcast. So it is very interesting, the dynamic across the groups and how you guys are actually working together to further manufacturing as a group. There's no infighting, or at least there hasn't been any this morning. So just to provide a little context, we just went on a tour.
What time?
Yeah, not yet. Lunch is on its way, so we'll see what we talk about then. To provide a little bit of context, we just went on a tour. We showed Representative Learned our building, then also sister company Dynamic right across the way. And I just wanted to see, did you have any thoughts or feedback on what you saw? Is it what you expected, or was it different? What are your takeaways from?
No,
seeing
it's
what
not
we're
what I
doing here and also
expected.
over there?
No, you walk up, it looks like any old, office complex, right? And you walk in, it's like state of the art automations, kids putting together AI, machine learning stuff to see like the images to do product testing at a rapid scale, and basically do with a computer what used to take a person hours and hours, days and days, an entire career trying to learn, right? Like I think it's incredible. Just what I saw, it felt walking next door that we basically walked into my son's Lego room on steroids. There was a little bit of that, right? Yeah. Just a little less plastic, a little more aluminum, but and some super high tech parts. But
yeah, that's really, here is really the present, and then that's the future in regards to automation. The stuff that Carlos is doing out there with the AI, especially on whole location, that's some pretty innovative stuff. Carlos is a bit of our mad scientist in regards to machine vision. He's got capabilities that not a lot of people in the world have. But that's really why we focus that here. And then over there, more heavy on the robotics side, Vic is an unbelievable controls engineer, and his dad, his counterpart in the business, he works in Jacksonville remote, is the same on the mechanical side, with 35 years experience in industry. So like they couldn't have been better business partners to go into. And every day I walk over there and what we're doing down here, and I'm surprised myself. I don't tell them that. But I'm surprised at our capabilities, because we're growing every day. And a lot of it comes from our customer needs, right? They're trying to do things, back to being competitive. They're trying to do things to expand their businesses. And a lot of the creativity that we come about is a requirement of our customers saying, hey, we've got to figure out a way to do this, so that we can build this here, or we can build this, 10 times faster or 10 times higher quality that we need. The aerospace and defense customers demand it. And I'm impressed every day in regards to what our capabilities to do. And then also the technology partners we have, the suppliers that we have, how fast they're coming out with technology, and knowing that we have the right partnerships, that we're aligned with the right folks.
I don't think necessarily that people that are outside of manufacturing appreciate the amount of innovation or technology that is embedded in at least just the things that we're involved with. And I do think a lot of times people come to visit, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know you guys are doing this. I mean, that's really cool, right? It's almost like stuff that you hear about on movies or, read in science fiction books. It's like, oh no, we can do that now. We've got cameras that will help us do that. So it's very interesting. Representative Learn, I'd like to take a minute and have you just explain. You mentioned it early in the introduction about the manufacturing caucus. I personally have no idea what that is or why it's important. So I did want you to spend some time talking about that, and just explain a little bit about why that's of interest to you, and then also maybe the mission or vision. Just touch on that.
I think Kevin said it best with FloridaMakes. We want to grow the sector, right? We want to make Florida. We all know this is a state that people across the nation want to move to. It's happening every single day. We want them to have jobs when they get here, right? And we want to make sure that we live by the pledge that we've made to make Florida a business-friendly state. And that goes for all types of businesses. That is not just, if you want to open a theme park in Orlando or a small tutoring center in Brandon, but if we want to make things in Florida that we sell to customers outside of Florida. That is the basic premise of how you grow an economy, right? We want people spending their money here, whether it's on vacation, retirement, or buying our stuff. And we can make great stuff. And we should be, and that, I know, yeah, I was in the military, still am in the military. And so what you say about aerospace and defense contracts, yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, too, I want Jeff Bezos buying our stuff. I want this, I want to fill those Amazon stores with Florida products, not stuff that's made in China and Taiwan. So it's a grand goal. It's a bipartisan goal. We have members from across the state, across partisanship, across all of the great divides, even that divide the Army and the Navy in the service category of our veterans. But we just want to all work together to deliver and really take those 410,000 jobs that you mentioned, Kevin, and make that 1 million. Why not?
No, that's great. And we did just want to take a minute and thank you for your service. We were founded by a Korean War veteran, and that definitely runs throughout this organization. Always has
tail gunner. And you stole my thunder. I was going to.
I will say,
good job, Nate.
I don't want to. I'm not going to spend too much time just crapping on the Air Force here, but that means your grandfather spent an entire career just looking at the back of an airplane,
shooting other planes. Yes.
Yeah, that's got to do something to your brain.
Yeah, he never got worried about anything business wise. Regardless of, running a business can be a roller coaster. No one's shooting at me.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we get stressed out about like too many meetings in a day. It's like
I can only imagine how
he
would respond to some of my whining.
Yeah. Oh man, lunch is late.
Oh, Uber forgot your sauce. Yeah. I don't think that'd go over well with him. Yeah.
Representative Learned, I wanted to touch on. Have you seen any big wins over the past couple of years, specifically in manufacturing in Florida, like things that you're really proud of that you wanted to either draw attention to or just kind of use as an example of either growth in manufacturing or making it easier for, maybe companies to move down here, et cetera, like some of the initiatives that you've seen be successful over your time?
Yeah, well, I always hate to take a pass, but I always remind people I've been in office 18 months, right? And we are just getting started. We just had our founding year as a caucus this year. I know we put a list of proposals together, I think, as far as the direction we want to go. What I will say is I think we have done a great job in the legislature, again, in a bipartisan way, of making Florida one of, if not the most business-friendly state in the nation. I think, aside for some of the culture wars that got in the way, most notably about, one of our biggest state businesses with big ears out of Orlando, we really do a great job of promoting Florida's businesses and making this a business-friendly climate where people want to move. And companies are moving jobs to Florida across sectors right now. Kevin, I don't know how you feel about specific to manufacturing, but I do think, one of the things I always say is life comes in chapters, right? Legislation comes in chapters too. We've done a great job of getting the tax structure in place, making sure we get regulations out of the way of small businesses. I ran a huge thing just to get freaking lawyers out of our jobs, right? Like it is shocking to me how much we spend in litigation across businesses in our state. And anyways, my point is we've done a great job of getting the lawyer industrial complex, right? We've done a great job of getting Florida to a business-friendly position that now we can, really target manufacturing in a more consolidated and precise way to get this sector booming the way I think we need it to.
Makes a state business friendly. Like when you say we want, Florida to be a business friendly state, for those of us that are listening that might not know what that means, like,
well, we don't
have
a tax,
to you?
Right? Like we're a very low tax state. It's a very easy place to get a business license and start making stuff. There's not a lot of government red tape that's going to stand in your way, right? The other thing too is, as much as we want to make it easy on the business, we want to make it easy on their employees, right? So one of the things we did this year was, and we talked briefly on the tour about the spousal licensing. So if you are a spouse of a military family moving to Florida, you can bring your license with you to, whatever license you need, whether you're a hairdresser or making widgets, right? Like, doesn't matter. We want to make that process easy, so we make it easier for you to hire. I know one of the common threads, and we talked about it today too, is basically everybody is struggling to hire people right now. So we want to make it easier for you to do that. And then also, again, making it easy on those employees to bring their families to the state. Make sure that we give their kids the best schools in the nation. Make sure that we make it an attractive place to live where, anybody who ever has followed my campaign knows I'm on a singular mission to fix the damn roads, right? So just making it a nice place to live. If you do that, and if you do that well, then people are going to want to come here, start their businesses, and jobs are going to follow.
And Kevin, what have you seen in the FloridaMakes sphere in terms of Florida and maybe manufacturing, either starting up new startups or movement from other states into Florida? Have you been seeing
you
migration?
see the migration, particularly in aviation, aerospace. You see a lot of growth over there on the Space Coast, and a lot of growth in defense industries, and that's beginning to multiply. What we've been trying to do is focus more and more on developing sort of that supply base for those companies. Because a lot of times when a company comes from another state, they bring their suppliers with them. So they may be assembling things over on the coast, but they're buying all the value-added parts from somewhere else. And so we're trying to get a bigger piece of that pie, if you will. And that kind of will speak to us having a greater productivity and a greater value of what it is that we produce here. So that's probably the biggest issue that we try to focus on, identifying suppliers. And we had a company, as an example, that they got some parts. A majority of their parts were coming from Russia and Ukraine. They're buying Russia, Ukraine, and they came to us and said, we have a problem. We were able to find them not only U.S. suppliers, but Florida suppliers. And often it's because they never looked, or they didn't imagine it was there. They don't imagine a company like this is across town or in the same industrial park. So that's what we were trying to do more and more of. You got the big companies, but those 22,000, 80% of them are under 20 employees. You probably deal with a lot of these very small companies. Getting them a bigger piece of that rock and growing those companies in the larger companies is really a pathway for success.
And Doug, on the commercial side, have you seen, our outside sales team running into that as well, where maybe we have a new corporation comes down, but they still hold all their supplier contracts, and we're in there trying to educate them on, what Adams can do, what Dynamic can do, and then also some of the lines that we represent. Is that what we're seeing too?
You mentioned Chicago earlier. People move from Illinois because it might be a less attractive business climate, and then they keep all their suppliers. And it's like, guys, when you look at logistics costs and what's happened with the supply chain challenges based on COVID and freight costs and oil spiking, it's finally opened some eyes, I would say, because it was more of a necessity. I have to go look for a new supplier. I need to look at a secondary source. Okay, might be open. Oh, I can't get this at all. Maybe it's a chipset or something like that. I really need to find someone. So it's more the necessity. And then, like Kevin was saying, it's awareness. I didn't know that there was somebody 30 miles from here that could make this part for me. Oh, and by the way, they might hold it on consignment for me, or it might be just in time, or they could act as a warehouse for me. Or, my freight cost just went down. I might pay a little bit more for this part, or this widget or this service, but my transactional costs have gone down tremendously. But it's just the awareness to know that that's there. And you're a small to medium-sized business. We are one. We are that exact business that you're talking about between the two companies. In the midst of running a business, it's very difficult to just go seek out new suppliers and new solutions. And sometimes it's just, you almost got to be hit over the head to go like, oh, I need to go look at something else. And that's really trying to, your organization, all of the manufacturing organizations, and also some of the state colleges, really getting them awareness that how good they are in regards to training potential new hires, and also making an awareness that people could go and get a 2-year degree that they could then go work in an environment like this. It's just that awareness that all of this ecosystem in Florida exists, and it's not like you said, Mickey Mouse and orange juice.
It's a promotion of that ecosystem. You know, we were talking earlier during the tour about the fact that Florida produces a lot of inputs, and a lot of those inputs are people too. You know, you're talking about talent. We produce a lot of talent here. We've got some great institutions, 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical programs, career academies. Some of that leaves the state. And so being able to capitalize on all those, you know, that talent base here is really the biggest return on investment I think we can get.
That's never heard it.
Yeah, and
Never heard it said like that with the inputs. It's people, right? So we have all these.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cold.
No, but I think it's true.
You know,
though. I mean,
when I think of technology, to me, technology is, and you might not like this technology producer, it's the state of know-how for making input, changing inputs
Totally
to
right.
outputs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that whole know-how. So you got the machines, but it's the process, it's the person, it's the environment. It's all those things coming together to produce a product.
The single biggest challenge we have with new technology adoption is people to implement. We can help a customer, you know, pick the best solution for their individual process, automate it, increase productivity 3x. But then now that solution is on their floor, and that small to medium-sized business now needs to go hire an engineer or someone with 30 years experience to run that. That person just doesn't exist. You know, in an industrial environment like the Midwest, they're all over. A lot of them are starting to retire, so they're having to backfill, but we don't have those resources. And you look at like an organization like University of Florida, you know, we have 3 engineers that are at Adams that went there. A lot of those students go to University of Florida to get a world-class engineering/manufacturing education, then leave. They go back to the Midwest, they go to the Northeast, some of them go to Texas. Why do they always win, by the way? Why is Texas always easier to do business with? I don't think that's the case. Have you, like, it's way bigger, it's hotter, and they don't have near the oceans. And I just,
but
Joe Rogan
Rogan's
is there, but he escaped California.
He's coming here next.
Yeah, he's going to move to here, Florida. But like, we got to beat Texas. I mean, that's really the sites that I got. You know, we got to figure out a way to beat those guys.
You said something earlier too that really stuck with me, because I think a lot of people, when they think about automations, they think of like, we're putting people out of work, right? Like, we're putting people out of work. Well, that also means you can pay the team you got left 3 times more. You're making it 3 times more efficient, right? Like, you can really scale. And then, oh, by the way, it's easier to start another company down the street that's also making some, put those people to work solving another problem, right? Like, the world's got plenty of work. And, you know, Kevin, you were talking about the Space Coast too. Like, you know, it might be true that the Midwest is kicking our ass in cars right now, but damn, I want to kick their ass when it comes to the next chapter of human history, which is, you know, going mining some asteroids and going to Mars and what's next.
A great example of that is South Carolina. Not to shine a light on another state, but 25 years ago, they decided they were going to go into automotive, you know, up against that Midwest machine. They produce more cars in South Carolina than anywhere else in the U.S. A lot of people don't know that.
It's not even a big city where they do it.
No, but they pulled that ecosystem together. They put that talent development system together, their economic development resources together, and focused on that. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here in Florida. You know, we have a convening that we do once a year that got a little bit skunked because of COVID. It's called Make More, where we bring the stakeholders together. You know, you've got people in charge of talent, producing engineers, you know, producing technicians. Bring them in a room and say, what's missing? What are the gaps? I hate to go to a conference where everybody's showing off what they did. I want to know what it is we're not doing right and see if we can put together a plan. And I think the output of that ultimately would be an input to the caucus. Hey, the world got together, the industry got together, the ecosystem got together and said, this is what we need, you know, or this is great, but we need more. And that's kind of what we're trying to push, you know.
No, I agree. I think from the caucus's perspective, we're always looking from any member of the legislator's perspective, you know, that so much. I mean, you can walk around, go to tours all day, and just be like, I want to run a bill that does this. I want to solve this problem or that problem. It's like, oh no, the government gets in the way, right? Like, we want to hear from you. Like, what do you need? Like, just tell us what you need. How do we make that easier? Let's put it on paper and let's get it done. Like that's, I ran a bill this year. It was such a common sense bill, and it was for home kitchens. Nobody ever thought about doing it. Like, we got Ubers for cars, and the gig economy is here, but nobody can cook a meal out of their house and sell it to a neighbor.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So we ran
That's
a bill,
illegal?
and I did this as a Democrat. I had the Heritage Foundation, like the James Madison Institute. I mean, every libertarian think tank in DC was calling me, being like, Andrew, this is a great bill. Why are you doing it? Because it was a problem that one of my constituents brought to me, where it was somebody who was cooking in her kitchen and going and selling at job sites, and she got shut down. And they found out it was illegal. It's like, let's find a way we can make that happen.
And yet a lot of those companies produce salsas and different things.
Oh yeah,
began in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
For sure.
And they all started there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
they all start there. So some of them get away with it before they make it big, right? And they can go on to because nobody what I liked about the bill, there's a lot of safety concerns that we had to work out
get
get it to the finish line. But there was a lot of like along the way, making sure that nobody wants to be you're in a manufacturing business, you want to scale, right? Nobody starts a business being like, I'm going to make food out of my kitchen for the rest of my life. No, it's like you want to do it for 3 months and then go on to a commercial.
In an apartment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Back bedroom. Yep. Absolutely. That was not his grand plan.
That was not the dream.
It was just, let's get out of here as soon as possible. That was one of those things.
Yes, but when I started my company, when I left the military, it's like you start with maxed out credit cards and hope, right? And just a little leg up on those early days. Now we got a successful company. We're employing people. I've met all sorts of people here that have a job because of that manufacturing process started in a bedroom.
Overnight success after 10 years.
Representative.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about one of your constituents brought you a problem, right? And I love the fact that you're here. You spent the time, out of your busy schedule to come and tour and talk with Doug and also Vic over at Dynamics to get a feel for what we're doing and some of the roadblocks that maybe Doug or our customers are facing as on the commercial side. How else are you interacting with your constituents? Like, what does that look like now on the backside of COVID, and obviously with social media all over the place? How are you finding best interaction with your constituents?
Oh, it's funny. That's a funny way to ask that question because we are here talking about automations in manufacturing, and I am probably the leading guy on trying to automate political campaigns, because I think, we all represent 180,000 people, but everyone wants to have the cell phone number of their representative, right? Everybody wants to be able to get their in a world where your elected official feels more detached from you than probably ever before in American history, it has never been easier to make that relationship simple, right? So like I programmed an AI like chatbot to respond to people who are reaching out, trying to get them the answers to questions they have in the moment. And ultimately, it's not about just like answering question and like forgetting about it, right? But making sure they feel heard, that feedback is included in the next communication. So like Doug, we were talking about road projects. Then my number one mission is fixing the damn roads, but how many people text me a day about whatever road problem they've got in the district? The powerful thing is sending a follow-up a month later being like, hey, by the way, we repaved that road. Remember us, right? Like that's the feedback loop I think that is in the grand scheme of things going to help. I don't want to get political for a second, but in a world where like we've had mobs of people like descending on the Capitol, right? Like we've had riots and people have never been, and this is on both sides. We got people that are just angry and they feel unheard. it has never been easier to hear people and respond at scale because of the automations that can happen in communications, which is what I'm talking about, or Doug, what you're doing, which is like putting those automations into building things and creating widgets, right? So this is the future, and it should be the topic of every conversation across industries.
Yeah. And Doug, how do you think we've changed or starting to change how we interact with and communicate with customers, not only to address some of the issues that Kevin brought up in terms of, hey, maybe you moved here, you don't know that there's a local supplier, but also with some of the technology that we're developing so that people know that, hey, you need inline, 360-degree wire inspection, we can do that. How do you think that's going to change in the manufacturing space here in the next, 3 to 5 years?
I think you have, what I reiterated earlier, that, COVID in the supply chain has forced customers to look at different technologies to support their business. And they've started, the vehicle typically is the internet. We think at Adams that it's part of our sales training is that 60 to 70% of the decision is made before a customer would ever reach out to someone like us. They call it essentially dark social is what we would call it. And that's customers talking word of mouth, talking to their buddies, talking to, a manufacturing group, talking to maybe a coworker in Chicago or Illinois on technology that they might be using. And then they're going to go start searching. We've really tried to make it as easy as possible to try to show customers what's capable. We have a world-class social media manager over there that does about 14 other things for our organization. But that's really what the shift has been at Adams. It's, the first thing when Nate came aboard is you guys do a lot of cool stuff here and no one knows. And, you would be an example today. So our objective is to try to get it out there. And even if it's not the individual solution, it's the technology exists. Let's have a discussion about it. Let's engage with one of our team members. Like our salespeople are salespeople, but they're traditionally engineers. Like it's not sell first. It's and we even have some challenges with that where it's design first. No, we got to sell something too. Like, this is a business, but, we got to make sure that we're not just spending all the time designing. But at the end of the day, like, let's figure out what the solution is going to help your factory. And then let's just try to sell something there versus, hey, this is the widget you need. The e-commerce side has changed our business quite a bit in regards to customers being able to access technology. We'll have an e-commerce site, by the end of the year. So the customer wants to handle, just pure transactions that way, automated, so they don't have to call someone they might not want to work with. Or a lot of our manufacturers run 24 hours a day, so they can, buy things whenever they want. But if they truly want to have a conversation, we'll meet them where they are. We either go to their facility, we can do remote meetings. We've got a training room down there. We can bring them in and show them. So however, whatever their medium of being able to understand our capabilities and our technologies, we'll meet them there.
And Kevin, in terms of the changing landscape and maybe how customers are not only transacting business, but also just capturing information, how is FloridaMakes going about making sure that, if it is connecting, people with suppliers or just staying connected with the group, how are you guys going about, doing that moving into the future?
Well, one of the challenges we have is traditionally, manufacturers came together in association, and it was a touch sport, and so, like I said in the beginning, we're a network of like 12 manufacturing associations in this area. It's Bay Area manufacturing associations, and that's how they would find information. And now we're kind of exploring what is that model of that association in the future, because you get information a zillion different other ways. And so we have to be part of it. We have to be social. We just put together an office space that we're hoping to take occupancy of, where we put an actual studio with podcasts and begin to capture some of that and distribute that through channels that people use today. I always pick on this one association. It's not Bay Area. But every month they would have a chicken dinner. Every month I had a chicken dinner, and I'm saying, man, the people that are at this kind of long in the tooth, where are the young people? It wasn't really the mode of communication. It wasn't how they can go. It's not to say that we're substituting all that people touch network stuff, but you got to look at the different mediums, like you're talking about, meet companies where they are. And so that's kind of a challenge that we have moving forward. How do we use the technology to promote the technology?
Yep. absolutely. And I think you guys all were talking about talent, right? And the talent that's trained here in Florida and then potentially it leaves. One thing that we found, I think, as a secondary impact from a lot of what we've been doing, whether it's, sharing our capabilities on social media or posting videos, etc., is the fact that now on the talent side, if we do have a job posting, people they've heard about Adams. They've seen us on LinkedIn. They've seen some of what we can do. They see, kind of our attitude. And I think that really helps us. I think that it helps us on, fighting for ultimately candidates that probably have, a lot of options, especially when they're coming out of these really good schools. So I think that is very important. Kevin and Doug, also, you mentioned it, is not just representing, to proactively prospect for customers, but also for staff, because we want to be a place where the top engineers, the top salespeople, the top programmers want to come, because we really are trying to innovate in this space. I mean, a lot of the things we do, they've never been done before, and we're actively solving those problems. In order to do that, we're going to need
it's an and it's not everything. It's like I'll do this or this. It's one of those things where it's like to track realistically the 15 or 16-year-old engineer potential at a middle school, or even younger than that, to try to get them intrigued with technology, or letting them know that these roles exist. So you might think about through college to maybe someone that's in their second or third career in that baby boomer generation. Throughout that entire range is who our target audience is. And I'm not talking Adams, I'm talking about us collectively from a manufacturing standpoint and just a business in general, right? So trying to figure out their medium, and there might be a 6-year-old listens to a podcast, but maybe a 22-year-old wants to go to chicken dinner, right? So we got to do them all, and we've got to do all of them well and show up at all of them, and understand that whatever that medium is, just trying to get the awareness to try to get that together is important, and it can't just be all one thing.
I think too, we've done a lot. We do a tour. I feel like I'm a manufacturer for a second.
We'll get to
the road. You
it.
can do whatever you want, right? Like you're on the team.
I think we're doing a good job of, really changing, I think, the optics around manufacturing too, as at a societal level. Because I think even, 5-10 years ago, when you thought manufacturing, you do think of the car plants in the Midwest and like steel smelting and like these hot, greasy, awful jobs. And it's like, that's not at all what modern manufacturing is. These are air-conditioned jobs. This is a great place to work. And we are going and making that case to kids when they are still in that middle school, high school range. We're getting them in field trips. I know Roy's listening to this. He brings field trips from his local high school out every year to come see it. And that is showing, what our future employees like. And it's a recruitment tool. And it's a recruitment tool at a massive level, and really changing the conversation. Instead of saddling our graduates with tens of thousands of dollars student loan debt, getting them a job right out of college, and getting them on with their life, and a great job that they can feel proud about.
Yeah, parent perceptions are the biggest barrier. They really are. My father had a shop, and he was hell-bent on, you're all going to college, you're not going to do this. And he just passed away, and we got to settle his estate, and we went, maybe we should have done what he did.
I was going to say, yeah, those guys, yeah.
he made a hell of a lot more money than any of his 6 kids. Yeah. But in his mind, that was a dirty thing to do. That was a lesser than thing to do. Everybody was going to go to college. And we're realizing now, 40 years later, it wasn't necessarily the right turn. So the challenge is to get past those barriers, to give them the exposure like you're talking about, the factory tours. I toured one of the colleges, Seminole State College, and they had like 150 students in their program. That's I said, great. How did you attract them into manufacturing? And they said, we don't call it manufacturing, it's robotics and mechatronics, and you can't get enough of them.
That's true. I
can't get enough of them. It was just, it's the package, That's the factory you're talking about, that mechatronics. And I think by nature, humans are makers. They really are. We sort of, I don't know, take that out of people as they grow. No, you're not this, But it's like the reaction you have when you go on a factory floor like today is, I want to touch that. Yeah. How can I run it? How does
how
it
does it
work?
I
work?
thought
Show
we
me how it
agreed we
works.
weren't going to put in the podcast that I touched it and broke that part. I thought we said we were not going to.
We've got the video to back it up too, so it's
I
great.
posted an article
Doug
yesterday.
didn't see that part, did
I didn't see that one.
No, it's okay.
I posted an article, I think it was from Bloomberg yesterday, about, and this is more of a national discussion, how they used AI and they started looking at conference calls of all the big manufacturing firms, and they start to look at what the buzzwords are, and onshoring, reshoring, nearshoring are all the topics. A lot of it's moving out of Asia, and I think that part of the challenge, like you mentioned 40 years ago, everyone assumed that manufacturing was just going to go away in America, right? So no one wanted to have their children go into a dead industry or a dying industry. Or it's like, well, I don't want you to go there. It's all going to go somewhere else anyway. So they didn't want to prep for that. So you're going to go to college, which the implication is that you couldn't go to college and still work in manufacturing, which who ran all these plants? I don't get that either, but it's unfortunate that was the path, and we've got to undo that. But nationally, we have a bigger problem, and a lot of people think there might be a super cycle, a lot of finance people, that 90%, I think, of the manufacturers in the article were talking about ways that they're trying to figure out at least some way of making parts here that they weren't previously over the last 2 years. And that could be, not necessarily just the United States. It could be Mexico. It could be Canada. Mexico is extremely competitive, especially when in higher volume applications. They have a great workforce, good logistics. The infrastructure is getting better every day. I have a lot of buddies that do manufacturing down there. We have 2 major customers that design here in Florida and also manufacture there. And it gives them, a lower cost advantage without the supply chain challenges or potentially IP challenges of working with Asia. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. But with that, you're going to need 10x the people that you need now. I mean, it's a Florida problem now, but it's going to be a nationwide problem as we continue to reshore. And most of those jobs aren't going to be done by people. They're going to be automated machines designed by people, operated by people in a very nice, warm or cool and or warm environment, depending on what's going on outside, in a very high-paying job without the debt. So it's not just a Florida challenge. It's going to be definitely a federal challenge.
Well, our doors are always open if anybody needs to do a tour and wants to show, a group or a school, what manufacturing looks like here in Florida and what we're actually doing here. And, we do also have, robots that are hanging out too. So that's always a fun one. But I think that it does really open eyes once you come in and you see it. And then immediately it's like, how does this work? Show me what it does. Like, I want to see it do the thing. And I think that that's something that we all kind of are born with intrinsically. And then we just maybe lose sight of as we get down the path. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to finish off on some thoughts on either the greatest opportunity or maybe challenges that you see in manufacturing over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years. So I want to be able to go around the group and let you guys each speak to that, and then we can close out after that. So
Sure.
Kevin, do you want to kick us off?
I'll just key off what Doug was just talking about. I mean, what I walked away from today coming into the facility was, a lot of people see the automation and go, oh, that's the future. No, that's today. But what I see with a company like yours is a bridge to the future. One of the biggest challenges we talk about people, and you talk about the number of people we're going to need. There aren't that many people anymore. And that's where technology really has to come in and amplify that sort of production output for us. And when we talk about companies that are 20 person and smaller, that's a challenge. And so what I saw here today was where the value added of not only the robot itself, but the engineering that goes into it for a particular client. I think we're going to have to see a lot more of that in order to bring companies into the future. We're in that kind of transition period. You'll see them at the SpaceX's and the Blue Origins of the world when you walk in there. But if most of our industrial base are small companies, that's one of the biggest challenges. And so that's what I walked away from, like, ooh, Adams is a company where we can send companies. So
I'm sure that was the port of Tampa.
Pretty sure.
I'm sure that's probably what that was.
Yeah,
Edit out.
We can edit that out.
Yeah. It's a transitional.
Doug, what about you? What do you see? Opportunities, challenges,
Whatever that was.
Whatever that noise just was.
Kevin stole a lot of my thunder there. I appreciate
thank
that.
you for letting me go first.
Just make him think on his toes.
I think if it's the people, it's how do we make it lower cost from an education standpoint too. Like, and I don't know if that's industry working with especially the state colleges, those 2-year degree programs that are phenomenal. You mentioned Seminole State College. There's 3 or 4 of them throughout. I'd say there's probably 10 that I've been to that really have a great program.
Hillsboro's
yeah, Hillsboro's one. The one in Polk State is awesome.
Polk is
I mean,
amazing.
it's unbelievable.
You can find it in Bartow.
Well, it's one of those things like you drive there, and like the first time I went there, I was like,
I'm lost,
right? And then you the place, and it's like, oh my gosh. And then you go inside, it's even nicer, right?
That's probably the most fascinating in the state, I think.
And a lot of it had to do with Mosaic. They did an awesome job investing there. But it's how do we get state to work with private industry, especially locally, to one, train the skills that they're going to need, and then figure out financially, especially for the folks that might not necessarily have the means to do it. How do we help them, right? How do we get scholarships involved? How do we use state funding? Certain people are always going to have the means to go to a University of Florida or Florida State or something like that, getting a very high-end engineering degree. But that's not necessarily needed to make an impact in a factory quickly. And then you get that 2-year degree, get a really good high-paying job, save some money, and then go get that 4-year degree on your own without being burdened with a debt, especially if you're starting a family or a second career. So how do we make that easy for them? And then also, how do we make it easy from, I think one of the bigger challenges, we haven't really talked about it, but is real estate. It's how do we find, where are these places going to go? I mean, everyone wants the high paying jobs for the factory, but do you want it in your backyard, right? We're in a neighborhood, we're in an industrial environment here, but very few of these exist. You go to South Florida and it's completely full. They have a ton of manufacturers down there. I think that the central part of the state, there's a lot of opportunity. The Amazons and the Chewies of the world, especially in that Ocala corridor, I've kind of found that that's a really good spot from a logistics standpoint. Because still, Florida's a long state. You got to get out of it, right? You have to, if you manufacture here, but we also have big markets, so we can manufacture a lot for us, right? Our own consumption and the Caribbean islands. But trying to make it easy for those people when they want to come here. Do I have the talent, and where am I going to put my factory? And making those two things easy, we could maybe even have a discussion on reducing the state tax on commercial leases. I think that would be something that I think is bipartisan. I think would really help. It's a pretty big number, especially when you start to get some of these big lease payments that I don't necessarily know is needed. Because you have so much state income tax from other things, especially with tourism and just overall property taxes. If you could do that, I think it just becomes so much more attractive. I think the local areas do a lot with incentives that are pretty good, attracting things with local tax bases. But I think, from a state level, if we could look at doing something, I know it's been on the docket a few times and I don't know what's happened to it, but I think that would be the other thing that would help.
I think it got chipped away a little bit last year.
We passed another reduction.
I think it was 6.5 to 5.5.
Yeah, I think it's down to.
It's part of that Wayfair bill, I think. They took a chunk of that away.
Right. Is that's you talking about the Wayfair with the state income tax or the state tax?
The state tax on internet purchases.
I meant more commercial leases, so like.
But I'm saying what they did with the revenue was they applied it to reducing the commercial leases. I don't think they wiped it out, but they reduced it.
That is one thing that, while we're talking about what could make it a little bit easier, we've had to buy a very expensive piece of software because every city and county has a different tax. And I don't know if that's something that ever would be fixed, but it's very interesting. And for small businesses, it becomes very cumbersome. If I'm shipping something to St. Pete or I'm shipping something to Orlando, I could have a very different tax ramification. And it's very burdensome for small businesses to try to figure that out. And a lot of people are probably doing the wrong thing without even knowing it. So trying to make it somewhat uniform, I know that'll probably never work, but it's one of those things that's a big deal for small businesses.
Yeah. Anything we can do to make it easier is, I think, exactly what you're getting at. You're correct, Kevin. We took the revenue from the closing of the Wayfair loophole and applied it to the commercial lease tax to lower that. I know it's still an effort to get it lowered further, and it's a priority of a ton of groups. I know it's a huge thing. I just this week I got an award as a champion of business in the Florida legislature because of I know one of the things we're trying to do is lower the taxes, but also and we talked about it earlier, but it's not always the government directly increasing revenue that's a burden on the business. It's just the environment we create, and a huge piece of this is litigation and keeping just letting people work. frankly, and frankly, keeping the lawyers out of our shops, out of our tutoring centers, out of our lives, and just letting people do what they are good at, which is building the things, right? We want to make sure people are protected in that process, but we had a bill that had a $50 billion fiscal impact on it this year, which was crazy and it's criminal, and there's no reason we need to be doing stuff like that, right? So I think more of that work, we talked a lot about, state colleges and some of like the non-university pipelines and really just getting people to work in places like this. I got $17 million for Hillsborough Community College to get them some new facilities, expand what they're doing there. But honestly, I'm not kidding. I programmed an AI chatbot and I learned everything I know off of YouTube. So the world is looking different now than it did, right? I know you got a state-of-the-art training facility here to make sure that your customers are able to get up to speed quickly. And that's a big part of it, because I do think, we got to start being a little smarter about decentralizing some of this stuff, because you might not need to know calculus to be able to do it, but you certainly need to know the concepts. And I think you can probably teach those concepts, get somebody started quicker. Hell, from what I saw today, you could probably get my 9-year-old a job here. So we'll figure that out next.
We're looking for interns.
All right. Well,
so
they just want snacks.
I'm confident we could do over a bag of chips. They could have that robot programmed pretty quickly. The technology is easy enough. It's just getting exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think in close, I guess, from the manufacturing caucus perspective, just whatever we can do, please, anybody listening to this, reach out to us. Andrew Learned, cell phone's on the website. Just give me a call if you have ideas for how we can make legislation better to just improve the business climate, improve the manufacturing climate, and sell more shit. I'm in.
Yeah, we'll put links to your site and all your contact information in the show notes. Well, Kevin, Doug, Representative Learned, thank you guys for your time. We appreciate the discussion.
Thank you.